These are video notes for Algebra Chapter 1, Task 2, Finding the Mistake. With these notes, I'd like to give you some practice building an important skill, and that is looking at some algebra that has happened and see whether it's correct. This is valuable because you might look at other people's work, or you might look at your own work and have a hard time telling why you're not getting the answer you think you should be getting, or where your logic broke down. So let's get some practice. In the first equation, we have 2x minus 2 equals 14. And you can see that someone has then worked it out. For each of these problems, what I want you to do is when the video pauses, ask yourself if the answer is correct. Did all of the steps make logical sense, or did they make a mistake in one of these steps? So we can see that in the first step, this person subtracted -2 from both sides. Well, if we go back to task 1 notes, it tells us to do the inverse of the addition or subtraction. We know that the inverse of -2 would be add 2. So right off the bat, I think we found their mistake. What I'd like you to do is in this box over here, it says to write an explanation of the errors made. So we're just going to write subtracted 2 from both sides instead of adding. So in this column over here, it asks us to then give the correct solution. Well, to do that, we have to go back, and instead of subtracting 2, we would add 2. And if we add 2 to this side, 14 plus 2 is 16, not 12. And then we would divide 2 by both sides as they did. 16 divided by 2 is not 6, but it is 8. So over here, we're just going to write the answer, x equals 8. In our second example, the equation is given 5y plus -5 equals 10. Well, they did the correct thing of trying to get rid of the -5, but the opposite of plus a -5 is not adding another -5. So over here, we're going to explain the error that they made in words. And it just so happens that example 1 and example 2 both made the same error, but this time they subtracted 5 from both sides instead of adding the 5. So let's go ahead and add the 5. If we would add a 5 here, it would cancel. And adding a 5 instead of subtracting a 5, you're right, would give us a 15. They did this step correct. Since 5 is touching the y, the opposite of times is divide. That does cancel, but instead of 5 divided by 5, we're going to do 15 divided by 5, which is 3. Example 3. The equation is given, and if we read it from left to right, it says x divided by 6 plus 3 equals -18. This person started off with getting rid of the plus 3. The inverse of plus 3 is -3 or -3. That cancels. -18 minus 13 is the correct math problem to do. However, when you subtract -18 from -3, you don't get -15. When you have two negatives, and let me go back here. What they should have done is added a -3, which is the same as subtracting. And when we're subtracting a 3, it's the same as adding a negative. So essentially, they added 3 instead of subtracting, or they did not add -18 and -3 correctly. When you do that, you actually should get -21. So we're going to mark off this -15 right here. This next step, to get rid of x divided by 6, they did multiply 6 correctly on both sides. But since we crossed off the -15, it should have been -21 times 6, which would give us negative 126. Moving on to example number 4. They gave us the equation 4 minus 2x equals negative 2. It looks like in the first step, they tried to get rid of this 4. Well, if we look at the 4, we know since it doesn't have a sign in front of it, it's a positive 4. So we have to do the inverse of a positive 4, which in that case would be a negative 4. So right away, we see the mistake. 4 plus 4 wouldn't have canceled. It would have given them an 8. The whole purpose of moving constants around is to cancel out. So the only way to cancel it out is if we actually subtract it. And unlike examples 1 through 3, well, we're going to go ahead and fix that because we know that negative 2 take away 4 or plus a negative 4 should have given us a negative 6. But I see another mistake here. Up in the original problem, this says negative 2x. It looks like they forgot to bring down the negative 2. That as well is going to affect the solution if we don't change that. So go ahead and change that. And we'll write it over here and explain the second mistake. So this step now will be correct. To get rid of the negative 2, we would divide both sides by negative 2, and a negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3. Make sure you're on the back side of the paper, example 5. So we're given the equation negative 2, parentheses 8m plus 8 equals negative 16. Well, Word of Operations says to take care of the parentheses, and to do that, we're going to distribute. So let's do that and see if they did that correctly. Negative 2 times negative 8m is negative 16m. That part is correct. Negative 2 times positive 8 is negative 16. So I think we found their mistake. Let's keep going to see if they made any other mistakes. Let's take a look here. Okay, so I think we're just going to have to work it out. If this were a negative 16, the inverse of negative 16 should have been a positive 16 to cancel out here, which would mean that negative 16 plus 16 would be 0. So that guy should be 0 altogether. The second mistake I do see, although it wouldn't have affected this problem because there is a 0, negative 16 times m, the inverse is not to divide by a positive 16, but a negative 16. So essentially, this should say 0 divided by negative 16, which we know is 0. And let's go ahead and record the second explanation of this negative as well. For the next two problems, I'd like for you to look through this problem, and it is incorrect. I'd like for you to find the mistake. If you said they combined unlike terms, you are correct. In the first step, it looks like everything was good to go. My marker back, so that guy was good. However, to get to the second step here, let's see, they added 20h plus 2h, but they also added this 5 there, and 5 is not like 20h and 2h. However, if you still go through, h still equals 1. You would still get the same answer, and that just was by chance. So as this one plays out over here, and you don't have to write it down, but just take a look that combining like terms, 20h plus 2h is 22h. If we take 5 away from both sides, it gives us 22h equals 22, and 22 divided by 22 is 1. So again, just by chance, for that one, we get the same answer. Let's do the same thing for number 7. I'd like for you to look at it and see if you can come up with a mistake. And actually, this problem has 3 mistakes. So if you said that in the second step they did not multiply or distribute right here the -2 and the -8 correctly, you were correct. Should have got +16 in the step. Later on, when they combine like terms, -2x plus 4x should have given them a +2x. So there was a second mistake. And thirdly, they did not divide by -2. So down here at this step, -2x should have been divided by -2 to get rid of that guy, which means we would have had to bring the negative over here. And 4 divided by -2 is not +2, but -2. Hope you found my mistake. These 3 errors were correct, but I jumped the gun and didn't correct them before I solved. So if you go through and actually work the problem out correctly by correcting all of these errors, you can see my work in blue, and the correct answer should be x equals -14. Kudos to you if you saw that and got that right.